This episode has been brought to you by justinform.com. If you're tired of being censored, tired of having your data stolen and sold, go to justinform.com, a social media site where all voices are welcome.
Everybody, thank you all so much for tuning into another important segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. And as always, I do want to thank our patrons on Patreon. You can support us by going to www.patreon.com/Mi Casa es Su Casa, or you can just click on the link below. That's cool too. Also, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in because, as you know, the elections are coming up, and it's important to distinguish between these people who would call themselves allies, despite their track record showing otherwise, right? The Democrats are known for this as far as how they try to pander to the left, to marginalized people, to minorities, to women, etc., etc., etc. And they, obviously talk to the poor as well. And then the Republicans also try to do this by pandering to the white majority, pandering to the lower middle class, to impoverished, claiming that if you just hold on a little bit longer, we'll make taxes a little bit less so that you can be just as rich as we are, knowing they have absolutely no intention on doing so. And it seems like all sides of all parties, not really us independents who make up a majority of the country, but people in the right states to affect enough, keep buying the nonsense. Kamala Harris is a perfect example of why it doesn't matter whether or not they have a D or an R in front of their name. The only sign that matters to them is a dollar sign. So, many of you know Kamala Harris as this rising star in the Democratic Party, people. I don't know why she's a rising star. That's just what we're being told. I'm not exactly sure where that sentiment came from, to be totally honest with you. It's almost like somebody just created that off the top of their head because they had it predetermined based off of actions she had fulfilled in the past as favors for those in power within her party. But that's neither here nor there. That's just speculative. That's speculative. But even though we know her as the resistance queen that the Democratic Party is currently propping up, she is now, or she used to be at least, known for something very different in California. Well, she was the Attorney General in California, people. And there was a reason you didn't hear about her from our progressive cohorts. There was a reason that she wasn't touted as the progressive / Democratic superstar as she is right now. And there is a reason that she never, if ever, brings up her career as Attorney General. Because one of the things that she is known for, outside of doing whatever she can to help those poor disenfranchised big banks, is work her ass off to authorize the government to take your shit from you. That's right. Kamala Harris went out of her way to fight legislation that would disallow or at least mitigate how the prosecutors and the police force use civil forfeiture. But it gets better, because then she sponsored legislation as the Attorney General. She sponsored legislation to expand the use of civil forfeiture for prosecutors. Let me help you understand what that means. That means that you don't have to be proven guilty. You don't have to be found guilty. You don't even really have to be a long-term suspect, just a suspect. It doesn't matter. Yeah, due process, right? Now, I do want to make it perfectly clear, if you're a conservative and you have a problem with this, you should. But I hope that you have just as much of a problem with the fact that Jeff Sessions did this very thing not even a year ago. So, word on the street is he actually got this from Kamala, which is why I say there's no difference at all. Now, Kamala Harris is also known for her dealings within the prison industrial complex. Like I said, she's also known for helping out big banks. And for all of her abilities to apparently sponsor legislation, which I didn't even know attorney generals did. I did not know that. That's new for me. Learn something new every day. She has never sponsored one piece of progressive legislation her entire tenure as attorney general. But now, as she has all this national attention, she's the promised one. She's the rising star. You know who else is considered pretty favorable in the hearts of big Clinton donors and Clinton allies? Her sister, who's oftentimes not talked about. Her name is Maya Harris. Do you know who Maya Harris is? Maya Harris was one of Hillary Clinton's top 3 senior advisors during her campaign. Maya Harris was a senior fellow on Center for American Progress. That's John Podesta's think tank. And, you know, it was said that Kamala Harris actually lost. She lost her election for attorney general. And they called it on the day that it happened. You know, they said, hey, it's the 5th. You know, all these elections are in. You lost. Get over it. And then something miraculous happened. 20 days later, she ended up winning by 50,000 votes. 20 days. They called the race because she was getting obliterated. 20 days later, she comes back from behind after the most significant precincts are counted and wins by 50,000 votes. Yeah. I want you all to understand something. Kamala Harris doesn't really have that much loyalty when it comes to the American people. And she doesn't even really, in my understanding, have that much understanding of why things are the way they are in the United States. She wasn't even raised here. She was here till she was 7. She moved to Canada until she was in college. Then she came out a politician. I'm not saying that people who are from Canada can't possibly run for politics in the United States, but what I am saying, however, is that Kamala Harris is not really in the best position to tell American people what they need, what they don't need, what we want, what we don't want, and what's good for us. And it's clear that she is totally apathetic. Look at her policies. For the most part, although Kamala ran as a Democrat, Kamala has always been conservative. And that's because, well, on her mom's side, she comes from a conservative background. So just because she says she's a Democrat now, we believe her? You know why she had no problem prosecuting black people and taking our stuff and instituting mandatory minimums and things like that? Taking money from the prison industrial complex? laughing on our face about it, and then claiming to be a champion of minorities. She has no problem with it because it's never affected her. She has no connection to us outside of her father, who she apparently was not that close with because she left to Canada with her mom and her father stayed behind after they got divorced. She has no connection to us. She has no empathy. I'm sure that at some point she's had to deal with being a woman and dealing with the things that women have to deal with in the workplace. And I'm sure at some point she had to deal with being a woman of color, even in Canada. However, it is a very different beast in the United States. And Kamala Harris is just simply, Kamala Harris is one of us in the same way that Joy-Ann Reid is. Joy-Ann Reid is of African descent, first generation American. And the experience of Africans is much different than the experience of black people in the States. And this is simply a fact. They're often told not to associate with us. It's unfair, but it's true. And why would they? Because of the difference. They just wouldn't really have a lot in common with us. I mean, the ones in the hood, they do, but most of them don't. And so that's what makes someone like Joy-Ann Reid quick to use our struggles for her personal gain. Same thing with Kamala Harris. So the only reason I bring that up is because she auctions herself off as one of us. And she's not. She supports ICE, people. She had the nerve to say that Nielsen should resign because of what's going on with immigration and the separation of families at the border. However, she supports ICE, who is going out of their way to do the separating. Which, once again, I believe the ICE is a program that is ridiculous federal overreach. It was created by George Bush, which is crazy because this man created more federally overreaching programs than anybody I know outside of FDR, except for almost all of them seem like they were to take rights away rather than to offer them. But hey, less regulations and state rights. Rah, 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 rah. People, Kamala is not your friend. And don't ever forget that. And of course, we will continue to remind you that as time goes on and she gets closer to 2020 and she chameleon. You're red and blue. Bitch, who are you? Look, people, thank you all so much for tuning in. And always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.